So we have a uniform policy, and this came out, it's come up multiple times throughout the pandemic of kids are going back to school, kids aren't going back to school, the cost of uniforms, should families have to buy the uniforms? And then, we've heard several instances where, students that had not the experiences we wanted them to have when they didn't have uniforms going back. So I thought for the sake of the public and the board to have a discussion and recognize that, uniforms could be a hardship at this time but that we just charge the superintendent and the district to have leniency, and that kids would not be, and parents shouldn't feel pressured to have to go spend money to buy uniforms. So that's kind of the concept of this discussion. Anybody want to go?
I'll start some of the conversation. I know we've had some discussion about this. I think there was some assumptions made when we started telling families, we know that it's a difficult time, and the last thing we want you to worry about when you don't have a regular income coming in is figuring out how to get a uniform for your child. So, we are going to be very cognizant of that as we move forward and make accommodations for students to be in school without a uniform. And perhaps the assumption was the without a uniform, because then when we start seeing the update of requiring specific pants or shirts or polos or things like that, that I know my grandson just grew 6 inches. None of those fit him. And any of the ones from last year. How many more of our children are experiencing this challenge, and how many more of our family members are experiencing this challenge, and how are we addressing it in the building, and are we being consistent with how they're being handled in school? Are they receiving consequences that I would say are negative, or not allowing them to complete their education or to have that educational experience that day, which I believe is at least the case in one situation. But for the remainder of the school year, I think that's a very important conversation that we have. What is our priority? What are the challenges? And how do we want to, as a district, serve our community when it comes to this specific matter?
Thank you. Ruth?
Yes. I totally understand what Gloria is talking about, and I read it, and I totally agree. However, do we divert back to a previous policy that we have? Because the reality is that we do have gang activities in our schools, and it's from an elementary level all the way up into a high school level. So, can we have something at least in place, even if we go back to, I don't know how far back the policy, Carrie, goes back. Did we revise? Or was it on the books while you were doing your revisions for the policies? Or
the uniform?
Before uniform.
That was before me.
Yeah.
That was before you?
Yeah.
Well, in taking in consideration, I think that we do need to have at least something, in place. I know that we're not talking about lots of time, but we're talking about enough time to where that there can be lots of things with really negative consequences that can come from that. So totally understand the reasons for, this request, but I just want to say that as a district is to be mindful, of that, and to be a part of. I'd rather over think something than to not think enough ahead of time. And so,
Absolutely, Ruth. Thank you for that viewpoint. Carrie, Lori?
I'm just curious if, what feedback are we getting from inside the building? This is the current policy, the leniency and the broader, allowing more solid color polo shirts and but what's the feedback from inside the school leaders on the ground? Are they hearing, every day spending precious time on this situation, or is it going relatively smoothly? I'm just curious about their experience on the ground.
That's a great question. Without intending to marginalize anybody who's had an issue with, and I'm talking about families, with dress code or uniform, the feedback we're getting from the buildings is that they've got this under control. We talked today as a group of leaders that we trust our principals and our teachers every day for big decisions, and this is one of those. How does this fit into my school? What is the priority here? Am I able to handle it? Is it widespread? And the answer to that is, the feedback we're getting is that it is not a major concern. Now, with that said, I mean, many of you have reported that you've taken phone calls, that you've heard from parents who are saying things like, my son, my daughter, my granddaughter got in trouble for wearing the wrong pants, or holes in jeans. And so what we want to do is come from a place of health. We want to give a reprieve. We want to be lenient. We don't want this to be something that people worry about. And if there's an issue, we want to be able to help in that situation. So I think every school, and I know at the district level, we have resources. We can get help to families. What our job becomes then as leaders here is we've got to get back to the schools where there are problems. If those show up and we confirm that a student got suspended, for example, because that student was out of uniform. This is not intended to be punitive in any way. And so we've got to overcome that. But those are the exceptions. The rule that we're hearing right now is that our school leaders have this covered. So I think it's just a re-emphasis that let's be lenient, let's help. Let's not turn these into disciplinary issues, and see if we can get through the next 4.5 weeks. I mean, that's kind of where we are. That's the feedback we're getting. Now, that I said it out loud, I'm sure if I'm wrong, I'm going to hear about it first thing tomorrow. So, but that's generally the feedback. It's a great question.
Yes, Gloria? Oh, okay. So,
Oh, I mean, to me, I've gotten feedback, about one incident with a kid getting sent home for being out of uniform, and with so few
Carrie?
in-person.
I have absolutely no idea
I'm
what you
sorry.
said, and I was in the meeting when you said
Let
it
me
the
try
first
again.
time.
I've gotten one comment from a student who got sent home for being out of uniform, and that is incredibly frustrating because we have so few in-person learning days. Like, that is not what we need to be wasting our days on, is someone's pants, for goodness sake. That said, if it's something that our building folks say is working and they're doing fine, then I think for the short amount of time we have left, that I think status quo is fine. I would like to see a larger conversation about uniforms, because I remember when the uniform issue came to be, and the discussions around that. And so my questions are not for right today, but in general. Are uniforms working? Are there things that are not working that we could make better? I think that that's worth a conversation worth having, because our kids at home have not been in uniform, for 3/4 of the school year. So I do think it's a larger conversation to have, but in my mind, we're a little over a month out. I think we just let it ride. If our principals are saying that they're good, I say that we believe them and let it be good.
We would like to have a larger conversation. I think for us, when we talk about larger conversation, we're talking about task force work where we get people around the table, and that would take some time. So a suggestion that I might throw out there is, let us put a task force together. Let us spend the next few months studying it, getting input, doing the survey work, talking to kids, et cetera, and then bring you a recommendation from the task force somewhere January, February-ish, so that we can adequately plan for the next school year. I think it might make some sense.
so 21, 22 would be still under the current. 22, 23 is when there could possibly be a change.
That's an idea, yeah.
Well, I was only thinking that because I was like, well, if we're going to do it sooner than that, we'd have to push out to information, parents, like, don't buy your uniforms yet, they may be changing. If we're
Right.
doing it a year out, then I think that's
I
an
think
easy,
it's-
that's an easy timeline to move that
Yeah,
way.
I think it's such a, it's
Yes.
such a challenging conversation because you have some in our district who have told us, please do not get rid of uniforms. We love them, we want them, and that's at elementary, middle, and high school level. Likewise, you have others, as you might imagine, who say, please, let us get rid of uniforms. So we've got a district-wide issue at hand that we need to take some time to walk through. So I would say next year looks the same. We study it next year, and then we bring a recommendation to this board in the early spring next year.
I want to kind of lean into what Carrie just mentioned as far as, and from Sean, where you said that the administrators appear to have this issue, and I know that Lori had asked this question, but then I'm hearing also that we're saying that some of us have heard feedback from the families in that situation. We can't have it both ways. We can't have it to where there's some are concerned and others are not. If it's one too many. The next thing is that if this is a district decision, is that it should be, and I know that we have Dr. Mouse out there, we have Dr. Polk out there, to making sure that at least we have something in place to where it is being across the board and not selective according to what school that you attend. It needs to be some directions from the administration in order for us to be more unified.
So I'm glad this glass is in between us right now. You know, one of the things that will come out of committee work is answering that question. Is this a sweeping across the district, or are we going to empower different areas, different schools, different levels? You know, there are all kinds of directions we can go. And we can make those decisions, but I think the better outcome is going to be if we get representatives around a table from all areas of our district and facilitate it and let that task force do the work. But
Oh, no, I totally agree in that, but I'm saying that for this last 4 weeks, these last 4 weeks that we're talking about is that that's the major discussion on if we allow the administrators in the
that's
building,
good. That's
but
fine.
you're hearing different, and even under the lens of equity, you know.
Yep, you're right.
So that's one of the things I want to make sure we're mindful of.
Okay, so I think I'm hearing that we're not going to take action. Okay, we are moving on now